So I wrote this in middle school. Which is maybe 10 years ago, almost. Almost 10 years ago. There's even a prologue. But like all the other stories I started, I didn't finish it. So it's not very much. I started it and just decided to stop. I got frustrated, I think. Prologue. She waded through the river and climbed out. The trees whizzed by as she ran from the night, from life itself. There was no turning back now. As her mother had said, "You've got to cross the Rubicon." I'm not abandoning anyone. Her lie disappeared with her footprints. Then she stumbled upon a root and fell into some shrubbery. She didn't know if it was just her luck, but soon after, she heard the sound of a hound dog and saw the boots of a guard come closer. The boots of a guard come the way she had came. Okay. She held her breath as the hound came closer. She heard it sniff loudly and saw the boots coming near. They stayed there a while, concealed by the bushes. Then she ran once again, her feet pounding on the hard, stony dirt road. She would not, could not miss this train. Her only chance to escape to freedom. The only train that led to Lumingsburg. Now, Chapter 1. As Sparky arrived at the train station, she slowed her running pace and came to a stop at the ticket booth. There was a short line, and Sparky was next up. She rummaged her pockets for money. Seeing how low she was on funds, Sparky decided to sneak through the station without a ticket and hop onto the right train. She slid out of line and headed down the iron and brick staircase to catch her train. Sparky was not prepared for this. Sparky glanced at a creaking clock on the wall, and she was late. Spark had to catch this train. It was her only hope. Spark leaped down the rest of the stairs, and still being careful of French refugee guards, she sprinted to the train's location. Sparky felt people staring at her dirty and odd appearance. The elegant ladies with little umbrellas chuckled as she whipped past them. She heard a horn toot. She saw the train, her train, speed off. Sparky's eyes widened, and she ran faster. The train had not yet gained full speed, and as Spark got closer, she was able to grab hold of a rail and hoist herself on. She had made it. Chapter 2. These chapters are very short. Sparky sat at the back of the train on a railed platform. The wind caused her hair to annoyingly tickle her face. She brushed it back. The hair came back. She pushed it back and kept her hands there. After a couple naps and long boring hours, Spark heard the speaker announce her stop. The train jolted to a stop, and Sparky who was standing, hit the rail. Stunned, she climbed down, using the railings as support, and hobbled off the train. She thought it was strange that no one else had come off. Sparky knew immediately why when she turned around and saw the landscape. Only then she sees it. It was abandoned, ugly. A house with a rotting deck was far out in the distance. She could only faintly make it out since the fog and mist blocked everything in her path. The train left. With every footstep into the marshy, sponge-like ground, Sparky got wetter. She was heading for the old house she had seen. When she arrived at it, she decided to knock. I wrote this in middle school. She balled up her fist and knocked the door. To her surprise, the door immediately swung open. She was scared for a moment because nobody was behind the door. Then she realized that it had not been locked. A nasty, cold voice screeched. Who goes there? Spark stammered. A visitor? The voice was kind now. It was still cold though. Oh, a visitor. Come in. Come in. She took a hesitant step in and saw an old lady. The pointed-nosed elder patted her on the back and exclaimed, I haven't had a visitor for ages. Ages indeed, indeed. Tell me your story. Have some tea. I guess this is her story. Is this her story? Lone Tree of Lumingsburg, Chapter 3. I thought. The tree. What a weird dream. The tree. It called for help. 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 Suddenly, Sparky bolted upright into a seated position on her straw mat. Yes, she thought. Definitely an awkward dream. After getting out of a train to Lumingsburg, Sparky had seen nothing of what she sought. Freedom? Yes, but what about life, happiness, and no fear? She had made her way into the fog-infested, abandoned plain and had seen a shadow. It turned out to be a house owned by an old lady. You could consider her nice, like Sparky did. Or mean, as the foreign rumor suggested. This is interesting. It's like we're switching our point of view in this chapter. It's actually very interesting. The lady welcomed Sparky and gave her some soup and a place to stay. After a long night of explaining, it came down to the fact that Sparky was the only one who had made it to Lumingsburg in centuries. An abandoned town where connection had been lost a long time ago. She's the only one who had made it. No tree was mentioned. Don't fret, soon or not so soon, you'll see the answer. Who is saying this? It's not the witch. Is that a witch? It's not the old lady? She's definitely a witch. That's pretty interesting, actually. It's like a different point of view speaking in that chapter. Sparky thanked the old lady and headed back to the train station with her suitcase and a bag. This was no place for her to stay. America. Okay, she decided to head for America. Was that necessary? A place mentioned in her school's books. Spark had run away from France. Okay, her parents had gotten involved in the revolution, and Sparky had fled as a result. Each step into the marshy soil of Bloomingburg filled up with water. Yeah. She means each footprint. Each footprint fills up with water. Sparky kept walking and walking and walking. Soon she saw a huge milestone that was next to the railway. Engraved in it were the words, Bloomingburg, 0 miles. As she got closer, she saw something striking. The rail tracks were gone. What was going on? Why hadn't the old lady told her about this? Perhaps she had seen wrong, and the tracks were on the other side of the milestone? Spark checked, and there were no tracks. She dropped onto her knees and lamented with agony. Did anyone understand her lament? Chapter 5. Sparky headed back to the old lady's house and timidly knocked on the door. Another visitor? She heard a voice yap. The old lady opened the door and exclaimed, "You again?" Sparky cried. "Where did they go?" "What go?" "The tracks, the railroad tracks." "Oh, well, Bloomingburg doesn't have railroad tracks. They disappeared with the trees. In fact, I thought you were walking to the next town." "But isn't Bloomingburg a country, according to what you told me?" Spark asked. Why yes. But you are in the capital of Bloomingburg, which is Bloomingburg. Isn't it most reasonable to name a capital after a country? Anyway, go on now. I ain't have all day. And with that, the door slammed shut, and Spark was alone again. She went in the direction the house was facing, toward the ocean. An ocean she would have to cross to complete her journey to restore the tree of Bloomingburg. This is some RPG shit right here. Chapter 6. But you must realize, the ocean was only one of the labors Sparky would need to complete. This is the storyteller, right? This is the narrator. Sparky didn't know she was heading toward the ocean. She just thought, as every small child would think, that since walking the opposite way of the house, the way the house was facing her had given her grief. Walking the way the house was facing would make her happier, or normal again. Normal? Normal. She was a bit confused, but she figured in such a mismatched world, nothing could go wrong as things were at home. Everything is confusing, she thought. Okay, Sparky. As she walked, it started to get awfully foggy. The haze hovered around her, wrapping her up like some foreign creature. The gray grass danced in a mysterious manner. Well, okay, this is really good writing, actually. Soon her shoes were hard to lift because of the mud, and her walking became unpaced. And Sparky didn't notice when she stepped over the edge of a cliff and plummeted into the deep, hungry ocean. That was sudden. At first, Sparky was a bit surprised. At first. But as soon as she knew what had happened, it was too late. After impact, the frigid water enveloped her and felt like it was eating away at her bones. She couldn't remember how to swim, or did she not know altogether? A swarm of thought exploded in her mind, and she started losing consciousness. A wave of bubbles whimmered in front of her, and that was when the tree called again. Whimmered. Chapter 7. This time it didn't say anything. It just called, and Sparky could feel it. She could feel its loneliness calling, its need for help. Who had the tree chosen? It had chosen her. It had chosen her. Sparky felt a surge of self-confidence and wildly swung her arms and legs with no rhythm whatsoever. When her head bobbled up from the water, Spark's eyes refused to open. They stung from the water and felt swollen. Sparky gasped and shook her head in agony. She squinted and saw a far-off boat with a blurry lantern hanging from the side. It was coming closer. Perhaps it had seen her. And then the boat stopped. A dark figure of a man jumped into the water. He didn't scream. All Sparky heard was the splash of the impact. The boat started drifting away. Sparky hurriedly paddled towards it. When she finally reached it, she cried out, "Whoever's on there, I think your friend dropped off the boat." Sparky was surprised at how demanding her voice was. There was no answer. She cautiously climbed over the edge and hoisted herself onto the boat. No one was in it. The lantern dangled about and glowed eerily. This really reminds me of Amulet. It's a graphic novel. I think I might have been reading it at this time. Probably copied some things off of that. Chapter 8. Sparky took a while to notice how tired she was. A sudden wave of exhaustion came upon her. Her head throbbed and she was chattering uncontrollably. She slowly crawled around the boat, looking for anything of use. She found a small compartment concealed by a wooden plank that served as a lid. The lid blended into the floor. Sparky withdrew a wool blanket, a small leather canteen, and a blood-red cloak. Of course, we need that blood-red cloak, yes. A wool blanket, a small leather canteen. It's almost like those were put there for her. Oh my gosh. Small leather canteen and a blood-red cloak. Well, we know what clothes she's gonna be wearing. The wool blanket was thick and fibery, but it was at least a bit warm. The cloak would be useless since it would only get wet, and the blood-red dye that colored it would seep out. She thought about all that when she was freezing. Sparky wrapped the blanket tighter around herself and started rowing the boat. She had seen her father row a boat when she had been smaller, before the tough times forced her out of the country. All her father did was push forward and lift. She remembered the rhythmic sound of the paddle hitting the water. Push forward, up, hit. Push forward, up, hit. Now rowing the boat herself, she realized how hard it was. Sparky had to lean all her weight on the paddles to propel the boat forwards. Then when she lifted the paddles up out of the water in a circular motion, the boat would lurch back to where it had been before. Is it forward or forwards? After only a few successful strokes, Sparky was aching all over. This aching added onto what she felt. Added onto the exhaustion she had before. Sparky stopped and groaned, but accepted the pain. Chapter 9. It's like this, I think. I think I wrote it wrong. When Sparky woke up, she was in a fluffy bed. Why aren't I in a refugee camp? She thought. She was a refugee before. Suddenly, the previous day's events came rushing back to her. Sparky was still a little confused, though. How had she ended up here? The room Sparky was in was very neat, tidy, and royal. The thin, bright red curtain to the right of the bed allowed light to come into the room, giving everything an orange glow. The dresser with clean clothes on it was honey-colored. So was the bed. The door in front of Spark was walnut wood. Expensive, she thought. She paced over to the dresser and switched to fresh clothing. Oh my gosh, I remember writing this. Suddenly the walnut door creaked open, and a raspy voice from behind it spoke. "Hello, number 2. You better hurry. You are late. We don't want the master to think you are late. No. Put your cloak on and follow me to today's meeting room." Sparky was very confused, but she obeyed. She found the cloak hanging on the back of the door. Sparky slipped it on, slid on the hood, and stepped into the hallway. 10. As Sparky stepped into the hallway, she looked around for the human who had beckoned her outside. She didn't see anyone. Then, a familiar sound in her head whispered, "Below you." Sparky recognized this voice from a distant dream. She didn't know why, but she trusted it. So she looked down. Spark saw a skunk standing on 2 feet, waving his hands in the air frantically. Oh, he was remarkably cute and fuzzy. "Hurry, number 2. Oh, this is the raspy-voiced person. I don't remember the skunk. I remember the beginning. I remember chapter 9. I don't remember a skunk. "Hurry, number 2. You're late. You're late." Then he scampered off. Sparky was curious about the majestic hallway, but she ran after the anxious skunk. He turned a corner and she followed, almost crashing into a large china vase. They were both running now, full speed. Mr. Skunk came to an abrupt stop, and Spark accidentally stepped on his delicate tail. Sparky could have sworn he jumped at least 2 feet. Oh, she did. So Spark accidentally stepped on his delicate tail. "Owie!" He screamed. He screamed. "Owie! Owie!" He screamed, clutching his rear. "Did you need to do that?" Then he fluffed out his tail, pointed to a golden door with an odd crest, and limped away. Sparky cautiously approached the door. It occurred to her that the door had no doorknob. Words formed immediately in her mind. Seriously? Okay. The words were spoken by the same familiar voice that had remarked, "Below you," earlier. Oh, this part is a little cringy. She whispered the old Roman words. Aperire mandata arborem? What does it mean? This is tree. Arborem. Arborem is tree. The door immediately swung open, and Sparky was overcome with the dark sensation of the room. Compared to the rest of the residence, it was most certainly a room made for a much different purpose. Dark, filled with an eerie glow, coming from an altar that was in the center. Altar. The room seemed like a meeting place. Huge, with a large U-shaped mahogany table surrounding the altar. The table had 13 seats along the outer edge. The walls were French blue. All seats were full, except for one, the second one from the left. That was probably hers. All the people sitting down had the same cloak Sparky had on. Hoods drawn up, almost to the nose, completely covering the eyes. The one at the center said, "Number 2, usually early." He had a horrible voice that sounded like a chalkboard. Oh, okay. How does that sound?
You're late today. Didn't you say you were coming early yesterday?
I don't know. Sparky was terribly confused, but she went along with it anyways, for she felt that if she didn't, something bad would be bound to happen. That is the end of that. I think I ran out of ideas about where to take the story next. What's interesting is I'm always mentioning the color of wood. What type of wood things in the room are made out of. Like a mahogany table. And then earlier on, honey-colored bed, honey-colored dresser, and walnut wood, which is expensive. At that time, I think my family was buying a lot of new furniture, and so they would constantly be talking about the color of the furniture and what it was made out of. So they would always say, "Oh, we want mahogany, but no, we can't. It's too expensive. It's way too much. But one day maybe we can get mahogany." So I was like, "Oh, I'll put a mahogany table in the story." I think there are some nice things in this. I constantly worry about making a story interesting. But you know, maybe just continuing it. Finishing one story is a good place to start. Does it make you dizzy if I do this? It makes me dizzy. It's a nice place to start.